What's up, guys? Welcome back to Newswave. Well, today, Pokemon Scarlet and Violet released, and I thought it was going to be a happy occasion, but yesterday, things took a left turn into controversy basically as soon as reviews went live, to the point where people were questioning Game Freak, the Pokemon Company, and Switch 2 was even trending online. We'll go over all of that here today. Also, we are going to be talking about some potential good news for the PlayStation 5 stock situation heading into the holidays, as we had an updated report around some of those pesky Scalper bots. And we'll also be talking about some new sales information for Sonic Frontiers, showing it hitting a milestone it hasn't touched in almost 2 decades. Guys, if you enjoy these videos, make sure you hit that like button, helps out a ton. And if you're new here to the Spawn Wave channel, make sure you subscribe down below. And we're going to start today with Microsoft and some of their Black Friday deals that they've revealed, specifically though for one of their consoles, that being the Xbox Series S. We can see this posted up over on news.xbox.com, where they say Black Friday starts now, $50 off the Xbox Series S. We had kind of talked a bit about this in the GameStop Black Friday ad, as that showed up with a $250 Xbox Series S. Seems to be the big retail sale that Microsoft's going to run essentially across the board. So that will be a very common sale you see at most outlets. They also have some holiday packaging for the Xbox Series S here. And this makes sense for Microsoft to be very aggressive with the Xbox Series S. They've already mentioned that it's a good way for new people to come into the Xbox ecosystem. And in fact, they have seen that in some of their analytics and different things they've recorded, where a lot of the Series S sales are to first-time owners in terms of the Xbox brand itself. So them marking it down another $50 to $250, that's a pretty good deal overall. And obviously they're looking at it as a way for people to enter into Game Pass. It doesn't have a disc drive, so you're going all digital one way or the other. But not a bad deal there. Even if you're looking for a second Xbox at $250, pretty good. Also, do you remember a little while ago, we talked about how Crystal Dynamics was asking through a questionnaire if people would be interested in, say, Legacy of Kain coming back? Well, we had the results that were sort of posted to us through an earnings call, and I think things are looking pretty good for Legacy of Kain fans. In fact, they said they had 100,000 responses to this, and that's not typical. We can see this post up over on VGC, who transcribed their earnings call. This is with the CEO at Crystal Dynamics and Eidos saying, in the past, we found that surveys typically get between 1,000 and 3,000 responses. But when we asked folk about Legacy of Kain, we received over 100,000 responses. 73,000 gamers completed it entirely. And they go on to say, hey, we hear you guys. All right, so this tells me, yes, something is going on with Legacy of Kain at this point. I don't think it's a bad idea to do a remaster of some of the older ones, because the control scheme isn't great. Like, it's on Steam, but it doesn't function well. And if you go back on the PS2 as an example, or Dreamcast, it could use some work. So I think that'd be cool to have some sort of collection, or even just do each one by themselves and release them onto each of the systems now as we go along. And that way they can gauge interest even further. It's one thing to fill out a survey, but would people actually buy these games if we brought them back? There's one way to find out. Oh, and we are getting closer to one of my more anticipated releases, especially in December, and that's for Crisis Core Reunion with Final Fantasy VII. And we're getting some more information around frame rate and resolution. We have an entire chart we can look at right here. Starting with the PS5, it's going to be 4K 60, the PS4 Pro 4K 30, and the regular PlayStation 4 1080 30. The Series X, same as the PS5, with the Series S apparently getting a patch day 1 to push it to 1080 60. The One X, 4K 30, the One S 1080 30, the One 1080 30. And then we have the Switch TV mode and portable mode appear to be the same at 720p 30 FPS, and I'm sure all of these resolutions and frame rates will probably change and fluctuate depending on what's happening on screen, because the game itself looks really good. It's definitely this blur between remaster and remake, but I really enjoyed Crisis Core on the PSP, and this looks fantastic from what they've shown, so I'm on this one day one. And guys, with some of the quick news out of the way, let's get into the bigger stuff. Let's start right away with Pokemon Scarlet and Violet, as the review embargo did lift yesterday, and wow, it was all over the place online, on Twitter, other social media platforms, a lot of talk about what's going on here with Game Freak and these newer Pokemon titles. First though, let's take a look at the review score here over on Metacritic, currently sitting at a 77. I noticed it was for Scarlet and Violet, seemed to be the same score, which makes sense. They're essentially the same kind of game, right? So sure. But that's on 42 critic reviews. Seemed like there were still a lot of in-progress reviews as well, and this moved down from a 78 to a 77, and to be completely honest with you guys, wouldn't be shocked if it continued to move down at least 1 or 2 points even, which we'll talk about that in a second. If we look at the positive to mixed review split, we have 30 positive, 12 mixed, nothing negative. So for the most part, a lot of these reviews came down to how important the technical aspect was. Now, there were some things about the game itself that were pointed out, whether it was kind of the repetitive nature, how the open world still needed a lot of work when it comes to the structure of it, maybe into the next iteration, the next generation that they launched, years from now or something. But the biggest takeaway is that this game needs help. It needs work still. Like it feels like a game that came out too early, and if it was any other title that wasn't on the Pokemon cycle, probably would have been delayed. Frame rate, stuttering, the way the visuals are, the animations being cut in half for different things that are right next to you at times. It's pretty rough. And there were a lot of comparisons being made even to the PlayStation 2. So it turns out MVG, when he replied to me being excited for Scarlet and Violet, was just trying to warn me that, yeah, you're going to be kind of playing a PS2 game. A lot of that has to do with the textures on the ground and stuff. The Pokemon themselves and the characters look good in still motion, so you have screenshots of them, but once they actually start moving around, the frame rate, not great. People are saying like 20 frames seems to be the average almost, which I'm sure Digital Foundry will have a field day with this one. And obviously now people are looking around saying, what happened here? How do we get to a position where one of the most valuable intellectual properties in the world, that being Pokemon, releases games in these states? And this is with the day one patch, by the way. Turns out the day one patch may have solved some stuff, and this is still the condition it's in. The biggest thing here is Game Freak, of course, attempting an open world Pokemon game on a pretty short development window. Talks that it's 2.5 to 3 years to develop one of these new Pokemon generations for these games to go along with. That's not a lot of time when you consider other titles that are pretty large as well, these open world games, 4, 5 years even, and they're not going to be delaying any of these Pokemon games. They have to come out at this set schedule because there's other things outside of just those games that release alongside of it. Now, along with this, the Switch 2 started trending, basically people calling for a next generation Switch to fix the problem here that Game Freak has laid out. And sure, I think stronger Switch hardware would run the game better. I think it's hard to dispute that, but I do believe the core issue here comes down to, well, one, Game Freak, because they've struggled ever since they're kind of a hard time towards the end of the 3DS life, but then moving to the Switch and really 3D game development, even on a TV, hasn't been great for them with that transition. But then also having to optimize and develop and then create all these new Pokemon and make sure it all works in this open world game doesn't seem like it was going to fit in that box of 2.5 to 3 years. So this could be something that they have to work on still over the next 6 months to a year. Will they be patching it that long? That's a great question. But at this point, sure, the Switch is getting a little older and maybe newer hardware would have been able to fix some of this stuff, at least to the point where the frame rate isn't in the teens. But obviously they're going to push the game out because, let's face it, this time next week we'll be talking about some ridiculous sales numbers that they've posted, and they'll just continue on business as usual. We've heard that the pre-orders are through the roof for this game, and well, that's all they need to hear. They'll just continue along with that, and hopefully they can fix it over time, or we do just get some sort of Switch revision next year, or maybe the following year in 2024 we get a next-gen Switch that is backwards compatible, and we'll just brute force our way to a solid 30 frames per second. Next up, let's talk about an update for Embracer Group, as they did share a lot of financial information, which, by the way, it appears that Embracer Group is doing pretty well. They have over 100% growth, and they're slowing down some of their overall investments, which Makes sense. They've made a lot of them, but they also talked about Saints Row and what's going to happen with Volition, which we can see this posted up by Gamatsu, where they say Saints Row developer Volition will move from being a subsidiary of Deep Silver to being a subsidiary of the Gearbox Entertainment Company. It kind of just appears they've moved Volition around here. It almost sounded like they were going to absorb Volition into Gearbox there for a little while, but I don't believe that's the case. They say going forward, Volition will transition to become part of Gearbox, which has all the tools, including an experienced management team in the United States to create future success at Volition. This is the first internal group transfer where we transfer a major studio between operative groups, but it is not necessarily the last. They go on to say that it did not, that being Saints Row did not meet the full expectations, left the fan base partially polarized, but it did perform in line with management expectations in the quarter. So it was okay, but they seem to probably want a bit more out of this title. And I mean, really damaged the brand overall. Even though the sales are good, it is one of those cases where people will remember what this Saints Row turned out to be, and they'll be a bit more skeptical of the next release. So sure, moving them over to Gearbox under maybe better management, and as they say, with the tools to succeed going forward, I'd like to think this isn't the end of Saints Row, because the sales were at least good enough, I think, to warrant a sequel, or at least another swing at it. Just maybe something a bit different next time. Oh, and we also had an update from them about Dead Island 2, and it's been delayed, which, yeah, I get it. The game itself has been delayed multiple times, almost canceled, revived, and now it's getting pushed back a little bit more. Again, over on Gamatsu, they say Deep Silver and developer Dambuster Studios have delayed Dead Island 2 from its previously planned February 3rd release date to April 28th. So almost, like 3 months almost out? Not too bad, I guess. They will have a showcase that will premiere December 6th. So in a couple of weeks here, we'll have at least some more information around Dead Island 2. It's obviously just funny because the game itself and its history, and we're getting close to it actually coming out, and then it just gets delayed a bit further. Just kind of keep that carrot on the string for anyone who is looking forward to the eventual sequel to come out. Next up, let's talk about the PlayStation 5 and the stock situation heading into the holidays. This obviously will be a hot item to pick up as a gift or even for yourself if you can find them. And it turns out the amount of stock that Sony is really pushing out the door right now is working to make some of these scalper bots a little less interested. We can see this posted up by VGC citing Netacy, which they say it's published its latest quarterly index on the top 5 products targeted by scalper bots, this time covering the third quarter of 2022. So again, this kind of leading into the holidays. This would end right at the end of September. So we'll see how October, November, and December turn out. But if we take a look at the top 5, we have Adidas, we have Nike, and then we have football trading cards and PlayStation 5. Now, this is notable because this is the first time the PlayStation 5 has fallen out of the top 3 in the index, which according to Net it says it's a reflection of the slight reduction in bots targeting the console due to stock increases. However, its resale value has remained stable with only a 2% drop since last quarter. Now, I do wonder if the overall demand for the PS5 will once again spike during the holiday time, especially in the end of November going into the beginning of December, and with God of War Ragnarok being out there, getting rave reviews, and there are some other releases still coming up like Need for Speed, Callisto Protocol, Final Fantasy VII Crisis Core. So it's still going to be a pretty busy holiday season, and obviously there's gonna be a lot of demand, but the question will be, can Sony continue to flood the market with PlayStation 5 systems? Because I see them go up consistently for sale on their PlayStation Direct store. I've actually seen them pop up on Amazon with the invite link, and people are getting PS5s now much easier than they were even just a few months ago. So I'm hopeful that this holiday, it'll be a bit easier to find a PlayStation 5 because it's been 2 years. I think we should be getting to that point where you can walk into the store and see a unicorn or basically a PS5 on the shelf. And in our last bit of news, let's talk about the Famitsu sales charts. These, of course, being the week-to-week sales in Japan. I wanted to bring these up in particular because it does show us Sonic Frontiers, and a pretty big accomplishment, I'd say, for the franchise, but we also have a few other titles in there. Let's go over to the top 10, starting with Splatoon 3 at the top because it's just always up there at this point. I mean, if you add up sales of things like Tactics Ogre, it would overtake it, but hey, Splatoon 3 just continues to roll along there. But then look right below that, we have Tactics Ogre Reborn, this on the Switch, 36,783 copies. It did outsell God of War Ragnarok, which is right below that. in Japan. So hey, shout out to Tactics Ogre. Then we have God of War Ragnarok, 29,377. Sonic Frontiers, this one on the Switch, 26,067. Tactics Ogre again, 12,668. That on the PS4. God of War Ragnarok on the PS4, 11,260. Then we have Sonic Frontiers on the PS5 at 11,000 copies. Then on the PS4 at 9,000 copies. Mario Kart 8 Deluxe, because why not? And then Tactics Ogre Reborn on the PS5 to wrap up the top 10. A quick look at the hardware. We have the Switch at the top, 97,542. Bit of a bump up from the previous week by about 7,000 units. The PS5 just about doubling. Yep, doubling up over the previous week, 28,716. The Xbox Series, I mean, really plummeting here a bit, 748 systems. The PS4, 138, and then the 3DS at 32. Now, it's great to see things like Tactics Ogre doing so well there in Japan. It makes me hopeful that Final Fantasy Tactics remake or remaster could be on the way at some point. But the thing I wanted to point out here is that Sonic Frontiers did pretty well in Japan. In fact, we can see Game Data Library took all of the SKUs, added them up, and really compared them to some of the launch sales of other Sonic games in Japan. We have to go all the way back to Sonic Heroes, which is nearly 20 years ago. It's like 18 and a half years ago, to compare it to Sonic Frontiers opening. That being 50,000 copies with Sonic Frontiers at 46,276. It's not touching Sonic Adventure 2 or, Sonic Adventure. This is Sonic Adventure on the Dreamcast. Wow, different times back then. But yeah, it seems like Sonic Frontiers, the open zone concept that they had and kind of reinventing the Sonic video game itself, it's off to a good start here. I think Sonic Frontiers will still sell really, really well. I'm more curious about the future of the Sonic franchise, especially if they continue with this open zone concept and if they can build on top of it. Not necessarily this Sonic game with Sonic Frontiers, but the next one. Can they continue to improve and eventually perfect that system and make it so things don't obviously pop in 10 feet in front of you? But hey, a good start here for Sonic Frontiers. I do think it's going to go on to do very well for Sega. And before we go to the comment of the day, we're going to take a look at the poll that I posted up yesterday. We're asked, have you ever passed on or stopped playing a game you were excited for because of performance issues in game, frame rate, crashing, anything like that? 67% said yes, 33% said no. Some people will be more sensitive to frame rate than others. I think crashing is the obvious one, or you just get stuck with a bug or something in a game and you go, you know what? I'm not restarting this game to play another 10 or 15 hours up to this point. I'll just wait to see if it gets fixed someday. Cyberpunk being probably the best example, at least the most recent example. That game crashed on me a lot. I just powered my way through it. I was very stubborn with that one. I think most recently that I could think of, probably Sonic Frontiers on the Switch in handheld mode. I thought about trying to play through it and then I got it and I'm like, ooh, okay, maybe not. So I've mostly moved on to occasionally picking it up on the PS5 in small bursts and playing through it there. But yeah, I kind of made this poll after I saw what happened with Pokemon Scarlet and Violet and some of the performance issues there, which we'll be checking that one out, I think, tomorrow and see how that goes. And we'll finish up with the comment of the day, as you're seeing here. This is from Jenkins saying, sadly, I have to wait until next Wednesday to play Pokemon Violet. I ordered the special edition Pokemon Switch on Amazon on the 5th, and they messed up and didn't ship yet, so estimated delivery is next Wednesday, which is a full weekend after it released. I just can't wait to play it. Okay, so it's not just me with Amazon recently. Let me know if this is happening to any of you as well, but I know with two games, it happened with Tactics Ogre. I had put the order in a while before and it showed up like 2 or 3 days after release day. But the Bayonetta 3 Masquerade Edition, the special edition, the box and all this, showed up 2 weeks after it came out and they delayed it in my order history like 3 times. So yeah, it's not as reliable, I feel like, as it used to be with Amazon and these day one or release date shipments, but let me know if that's something you're seeing too. And ladies and gentlemen, that's gonna do it here for Newswave. If you enjoyed this video, guys, hit that like button. If not, hit the dislike. Leave comments down below about everything we talked about here today. Was Pokemon Scarlet and Violet. How do you feel about some of the performance issues that have been brought up, and have you had a chance to play them yet? And then also, what about the PlayStation 5 stock situation heading into the holidays? Are you looking to get one as a gift or maybe even for yourself? Thanks guys for watching. Have a great weekend. I'll see you back here Monday morning, 8 a.m. Eastern Time for Newswave.